Before we begin, if you think you can handle a story carved from the darkest corners of criminal history, then buckle up, hit that subscribe button, like this video if you dare, and drop a comment telling us how long you would last inside the world's most extreme prison. Now, let's enter the shadows. The rain came down in violent sheets tonight. They found the transport van flipped on the narrow mountain road, metal twisted like paper, tires still spinning, headlights slicing through the fog. What made the scene electrify every investigator's nerves wasn't the crash. It wasn't even the blood on the windshield. It was the fact that the van belonged to CECOT, the world's highest security correctional center, a fortress designed so no inmate could ever escape. And yet the rear doors of the van hung open, completely empty. 2 prisoners were missing. Both were supposed to be locked inside steel restraints. Both were considered too dangerous to ever be allowed into open air. And one of them, prisoner 0471, hadn't spoken a word in 5 years. Detective Elise Calder arrived just after midnight, her boots splashing into deep puddles as she ducked under the crime scene tape. A former federal profiler, she had been pulled into the case so fast she hadn't even had time to grab a proper coat. Her hair clung to her face as she studied the wreck. "What do we know?" she asked, her breath steaming in the cold. A state trooper handed her a tablet containing the van's route logs. Van left CECOT at 1904 hours. Scheduled medical transport to the internal clinic. It never arrived. Dispatch got an alert when the GPS dropped off. And the guards... The trooper swallowed. Driver dead. Neck snapped. Second guard alive. Barely. Still unconscious. Elise crouched near the overturned van, shining her flashlight on the muddy ground. Rainwater streamed through deep boot prints, multiple pairs. Heavy, intentional. Whoever had been here wasn't fleeing. They were organized. Then she saw it, half buried under mud and broken glass. A small, metallic identification tag. She lifted it carefully with gloved fingers. 0471, the prisoner who had vanished without leaving so much as a whisper for years. She slipped the tag into an evidence bag, her stomach tightening. CECOT wasn't a normal prison. It stood in the middle of a remote valley, surrounded by forests so dense even sunlight seemed hesitant to enter. The facility was new, modernized, designed to keep the most violent, high-profile, and high-risk inmates isolated from the world. A place where silence ruled and escape was considered impossible. Yet tonight, the impossible had happened. By dawn, Elise was standing before the looming concrete walls of CECOT. Armed guards watched from towers, rifles angled down with mechanical precision. The air had a sterile chill as she was escorted inside by Director Ramos, a man whose stiff posture suggested he hadn't slept in days. He guided her to a sealed observation room overlooking the prison's central corridor. Dozens of security monitors covered the walls. "There's something you need to see," Ramos said. His voice carried a tremor he tried and failed to hide. He played a video. At first, the footage showed a typical hallway, bleak, gray, empty. Then, at 19 hours 2 minutes and 14 seconds, the camera flickered, producing a static that washed across the screen like crawling frost. When the feed stabilized, a shadow stood in the frame. Tall, motionless, directly outside cell 0471. Elise leaned forward. "Is that one of your guards?" Ramos shook his head. No guard matches that height, and there was no one scheduled on the floor at that time. On screen, the shadow moved. Slow, deliberate. The figure approached the cell door, and for a moment its hand lifted, holding something metallic. The lock clicked. Then the camera went black. Not static. Completely, unnervingly black. Every camera on that floor failed for exactly 6 minutes, Ramos said. When they rebooted, the van was already leaving. The prisoners were inside, and the unidentified individual was gone. Elise kept her eyes on the blank screen. Someone bypassed your entire surveillance system. That requires inside knowledge. "I know," Ramos replied quietly. She turned toward him. "Tell me about prisoner 0471. Ramos hesitated. "There's limited information. He was transferred from an undisclosed facility. Classified background. Never spoke. Never reacted to interrogation. But he wasn't violent inside the prison. If anything, he behaved like he was waiting. Waiting for what? Elise asked. Ramos exhaled. We were never told. Hours later, Elise stepped into cell 0471. The room was barely larger than a closet. A cement bed, a toilet, a single light, nothing more, nothing less, except, on the wall, faint scratches etched into the concrete, nearly invisible, not words, not symbols, numbers, hundreds of them, arranged in sequences, patterns, columns. She photographed them, studying the marks with narrowed eyes. She recognized something eerily methodical in the design, like a code. The last row of numbers stopped abruptly, as if the prisoner had been interrupted while writing them. Elise ran her hand across the code wall. Something here didn't fit the official narrative. If this man had been silent for 5 years, why had he spent all this time carving something so precise? And why had no one noticed? She stepped back, and that's when she felt it. Something small under her boot. She knelt and picked it up. A torn scrap of fabric. Dark gray. Coarse. Not inmate clothing. Not guard uniform. Something else. She held it up to the light. The material looked militarized, but with no insignia, no stitching, no identifying marks. Someone had been in this cell. Someone who wasn't supposed to exist. That evening, she returned to the mountain road where the transport van had crashed. Search teams were combing the forest, but the rain had washed away most tracks. She stood at the edge of the guardrail, staring into the deep ravine below, when a rescue worker yelled from behind her, "Detective, we found something." She hurried toward the voice. 2 workers were standing near a collapsed tree trunk. One of them pointed toward a patch of disturbed soil. Fresh footprints. Look at the spacing. Whoever made these was carrying weight. Elise crouched. The prints were deep, wide, and led straight into the forest. But what caught her attention wasn't the direction. It was what lay half buried in the mud next to them. Not a weapon. Not a piece of prisoner clothing. A key card. Black. Unmarked. But when she wiped away the mud, her pulse kicked. It was a CECOT master access card. The highest clearance level available. Issued only to 3 people in the entire facility. And one of those 3 was Director Ramos. Elise slowly rose, heart pounding. This was an escape. This was an extraction. And someone inside the fortress had made it possible. As thunder rolled across the mountains, she realized something else. Something that chilled her deeper than the cold ever could. The footprints led away from the crash site, deeper into the wilderness. But there were no prints leading toward it. Whoever came for the prisoners had never arrived by road. They were already here, waiting, prepared, and the prisoners hadn't escaped into the forest. They had walked toward something planned, something close. Elise followed the trail until it vanished into dense fog. Her pulse hammered as she whispered to herself, "What were you meeting out here?" She scanned the empty woods, and then she saw it, barely visible through the mist. A metal hatch, half buried, bolted shut from the inside. She froze, because whatever was beneath that hatch wasn't on any official map. She stepped closer. Rain hammered the trees like distant gunfire. Her hand reached forward, and then she heard a soft, metallic click from beneath her feet. The ground vibrated, just once. Then the hatch shifted, and slowly, impossibly, began to open from below. What she saw inside, illuminated by a dim orange glow, changed everything. The metal hatch rose with a low mechanical groan, releasing a wave of stale metallic air into the forest. Detective Elise Calder took an involuntary step back, her flashlight cutting into the narrow shaft below. The dim orange glow came from a line of industrial lights running down the hidden corridor. Lights far too modern, too deliberate, to belong to an abandoned structure. This place was active. Someone maintained it. Someone used it. Elise steadied her breath, tightened her grip on the flashlight, and descended the narrow ladder. The deeper she went, the colder it became. The hatch clanged shut above her, the echo rolling down the chamber like a warning. The corridor stretched ahead, walls made of reinforced steel, humming with electricity. A low vibration pulsed through the floor, like machinery operating somewhere beyond the walls. She walked forward, each step measured, alert. Then she saw the first room. A wide observation window was set into the wall, looking into a chamber that resembled an interrogation cell, but cleaner, more precise. Inside stood a single metal chair bolted to the floor. Restraint cuffs hung from the armrests. The oddest part wasn't the restraints. It was a screen mounted on the wall above them, still powered on. Its digital clock frozen at 19 hours 2 minutes and 14 seconds. The same minute the cameras inside CECOT had glitched. Elise felt her chest tighten. Someone had synchronized this off-grid facility with the prison that required inside access, high-level clearance, and resources far beyond normal criminal circles. She shook off the thought and moved down the corridor. The second room held something different. Metal shelves lined with medical equipment, not only syringes and monitors, but vials of clear liquid labeled with codes she didn't recognize. Some had government-style barcodes. Others looked foreign, their labels in different languages, none complete, as if stripped of identifying marks. She photographed everything. At the far end of the room, a stainless steel counter held a file folder. Waterproof, clean, recent. Inside, there were 2 sheets of paper, both blank except for a single stamped identifier at the top. 0471. Her pulse jumped. This wasn't an escape, she whispered. It was a transfer. The realization hit hard. Someone had wanted prisoner 0471 removed from CECOT without detection. Someone powerful enough to build an off-record bunker in the middle of protected land and link it to the prison systems. She had stumbled into an operation that wasn't supposed to exist, and she was now inside it. Elise backed out of the room, making her way deeper into the bunker. The corridor curved slightly before ending at a wide, sealed door. Again electronic. Again active. She pressed her ear to it. Nothing. No voices. No footsteps. Only the steady hum of electricity. She reached for the touchpad beside the door. To her astonishment, it flickered to life without requiring authentication, as though it had been left unlocked, waiting for someone, or expecting someone. The door slid open. Inside, a massive underground chamber. Cold, clinical, too quiet. And there, on the floor, muddy footprints. Fresh. More than one pair. They led toward a metal table in the center of the room. Its surface scratched, its legs bolted down. Another chair sat beside it, overturned. The scene looked like something had happened here. Something fast. Something chaotic. Elise followed the prints around the table and froze. Because lying on the ground was a small, black device. A camera. Portable, durable, military grade. She picked it up, wiped the mud off, and clicked the playback button. Static. More static. Then a frame appeared. A man sat in the metal chair. Shackled. Silent. Head lowered. A guard, or someone dressed like one, stood behind him, adjusting something near the back of his neck. Elise leaned closer. The prisoner raised his head slowly, revealing a face gaunt from years of isolation. Deep-set eyes. Expression unreadable. It was 0471. The figure standing behind him spoke, but the audio was distorted. Only fragments made it through. Protocol not stable. Must complete now. Alerted interference. The guard stepped aside, revealing another person on the left edge of the frame. Someone wearing a gray tactical uniform, the same material as the torn scrap Elise had found in the cell. They held a tablet, monitoring something. Their face wasn't visible. Then the prisoner spoke. A single, hoarse whisper. Too late. Before Elise could process the meaning, the footage jolted violently. Someone had grabbed the camera. The screen jerked, spinning, flashing glimpses of boots, mud, and then the ceiling. The recording cut out. Elise lowered the device, her heartbeat hammering. 0471 had spoken, and the moment he did, everything spiraled. Why now? What was too late? What had this hidden bunker been preparing to do? Before she could think further, her phone buzzed. One bar signal, barely strong enough to push the call through. It was Captain Rourke, her supervisor. Elise, where the hell are you? We've been trying to reach you for hours. I'm underground, she said. I found a hidden facility near the crash site. Not abandoned, active. I have evidence of a coordinated extraction of the prisoners. Elise, Rourke's tone shifted. Not anger. Worry. You need to get out of there. Now. Why? There's been a breach at CECOT. Someone wiped the personnel logs. All high-level access data for the past month. Gone. And Ramos is missing. Elise's blood ran cold. Missing? Or on the run? We don't know, Rourke said. But listen carefully. There's more. She heard shuffling, paper moving, someone whispering near him. Then, Prisoner 0471. His identity is no longer classified. We finally got clearance. Elise, he wasn't a standard inmate. He was part of an intelligence program that was shut down years ago. A covert one. What kind of program? She asked. We don't have the full files yet, but involved off-site conditioning, psychological operations, and long-term sensory isolation. They were experimenting with creating deep cover assets. Elisa's mind raced. You're telling me he was trained? Conditioned? There's more, Rourke continued. His real name, Elise, it's... Suddenly, his voice cut. The line fizzled. The signal died. Her phone screen went black. A chill moved down her spine. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and looked around the chamber. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt inhabited. She took a step toward the exit. A soft thump echoed through the metal hallway. Then another. Then the faint, unmistakable rhythm of footsteps approaching from somewhere deep within the bunker. Elise killed her flashlight. Her hand instinctively went to her holster. The footsteps grew louder, slower, deliberate. She backed toward the nearest corner for cover, her breath steady but tight. The lights flickered, once, twice, casting erratic shadows across the steel walls. Then the sound stopped entirely. Silence. For several long seconds, nothing moved, nothing breathed. And then, a voice, low and calm, rolled through the darkness. You shouldn't have come here, detective. Elise stiffened. She knew that voice. She had heard it only minutes earlier in the footage. Prisoner 0471. Except he was no longer shackled, no longer silent, and he wasn't alone. She turned toward the corridor, raising her weapon, only to see a silhouette standing in the threshold. Tall, still, familiar. Not 0471. Someone else. The figure stepped forward into the dim light, revealing a face she never expected to see. A face she knew. A face she trusted. Elise, the person said softly. Put the gun down. Her pulse went still, frozen, because the person standing before her was Director Ramos. But his expression wasn't desperate, wasn't fearful. It was calm, controlled, prepared, as though he had been waiting for her. As though everything, every clue, every glitch, every step, had been designed to lead her here. And before she could speak, he said the words that would unravel the entire case. You're looking in the wrong direction. The real operation wasn't about breaking someone out of CECOT. He stepped closer. It was about putting someone in. Director Ramos' shoes clicked softly against the steel floor as he approached, the underground lights flickering overhead like a warning heartbeat. Elise's gun remained raised, her stance tense, every instinct screaming that she had stepped into something far bigger than an escape, a transfer, or even a cover-up. What do you mean? Elise said, voice low. Putting someone in? Ramos stopped just a few feet away. His hands were lifted, not in surrender, but in a gesture of calm, almost paternal caution. You've always been a step ahead, Detective Calder, but even you can't see the whole board from where you're standing. Then enlighten me. A slow exhale left him, but there was no fear behind it, only certainty. 0471 wasn't a threat. He was a fail-safe. Before Elise could respond, a new echo broke through the corridor, measured, steady footsteps. Her grip tightened. She pivoted, gun aimed toward the dark end of the hall. The figure stepped into view. Not Ramos, not a guard. Prisoner 0471. But now, he walked with precision that didn't belong to an inmate, his posture straight, his gaze impossible to read. The shadows seemed to curve around him. "Elise," Ramos said quietly, "put the weapon down. He's not here to hurt you." 0471's eyes lifted to meet hers, and she felt something cold slide down her spine. Not fear, recognition. But she had never met him, had never spoken to him, had never heard him speak until tonight. "How do you know my name?" she asked. 0471 tilted his head, voice smooth and steady. "Because I was trained to." Her pulse kicked. Trained by who? Ramos stepped into her peripheral vision. By the same people who built this facility, who approved the sensory isolation program, who created the deep cover assets program. "Elise," he continued, "this bunker isn't prison. It's a control room. And 0471 is an escapee. He's an asset being repositioned." "Repositioned for what?" Elise snapped. Ramos exchanged a look with 0471, one that felt too familiar, too rehearsed. 0471 spoke first. "Activation." The single word cracked the room open with tension. Elise felt her heartbeat slam against her ribs. Ramos turned slightly toward the far end of the chamber, gesturing to the thick steel door she hadn't noticed before, the only one with a biometric lock. "What we've done here, detective," he said, "was the only way to keep this country safe. You killed a guard. Elise cut in. You staged an escape. You erased the logs. You built an entire off-grid bunker. Don't pretend this is national security." A faint, pained smile crossed Ramos' face. The guard wasn't supposed to die. That was the extraction team panicking when the cameras came back online too early. But everything else? Yes, it is national security. 0471 stepped closer. Elise aimed higher. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. "This isn't just about me, detective," he said. "It's about him." He pointed behind her. Elise spun, gun ready, just in time to see the biometric door sliding open. Inside the chamber beyond, a man sat shackled to a chair, face bruised, nose broken, blood dried along his temple. Her breath caught. Rourke, Captain Michael Rourke, her supervisor, her mentor, lifted his head, eyes barely open. "Elise, don't listen to them," he croaked. "They're lying, manipulating. You have to shut this place down." She rushed to his side, gun lowering for the first time. "What are you doing here? Who did this to you?" Rourke's hand trembled as he reached for her wrist. "He's not what he says he is." Elise's head snapped toward Ramos. "Start talking. Now." Ramos exhaled slowly. "Detective, your captain isn't a victim. He's the reason 0471 was placed in CECOT in the first place." "That's a lie," Rourke spat. "Don't listen." 0471 cut him off with a single sentence, calm as a surgeon. "You gave the order to activate me, and then you tried to erase the entire program." Elise froze. The ground beneath this case shifted again. She looked between them. Ramos steady, 0471 expressionless, Rourke desperate. "Somebody tell me the truth," she said. Ramos approached the chair, pulling a file from the table. He tossed it toward Elise. She caught it, flipping it open. "Project Harbolite. Deep Cover Behavioral Asset Initiative. Asset 0471. Primary Behavioral Prototype. Supervising Officer, Captain Michael Rourke." Her stomach twisted. Rourke closed his eyes. It wasn't supposed to go this far. 0471 stepped into the room, the tension thickening. He wanted to shut the project down, claim whistleblower status, expose everything. But that would have put every country involved in danger, not just ours. Rourke's voice shook with anger. "Danger? You were unstable. The entire program was a disaster waiting to happen." 0471's stare hardened, not emotional, but calculated. "This is why the extraction was necessary. You tried to terminate the program, Captain. And you know what happens to assets who are deemed no longer viable." Ramos looked directly at Elise. "You think we broke him out?" "No, we saved him." Elise felt the air shift. Every lie, every half-truth, every carefully placed clue. She could see the full shape forming now. Rourke had tried to end a black budget program. The program retaliated, used Ramos. Use 0471. Use the crash. And she had been dragged straight through the middle of it. Elise, Rourke whispered. They're going to deploy him. A living weapon. An asset with no identity. No record, no oversight. You have to stop them. 0471 approached until he stood only a few feet away from Elise. Detective, you know he's lying. Her mind raced, torn between two truths, one official, one hidden. She raised the gun again. Not at Ramos. Not at 0471. But between them. No one moves, she said. Not until I figure out who's lying. Ramos gave a slow nod. Then look at the last page of the file. Elise flipped it open, and the world dropped out from beneath her. Her name was there, her signature, her clearance code. Detective Elise Calder, Secondary Behavioral Evaluation Officer. Approved for field observation. Asset 0471. What is this? She whispered. I never signed. 0471's voice cut clean through the air. Not consciously. Her breath caught. Her vision narrowed. No, she whispered. You're lying. Ramos shook his head. You were never supposed to recover the memory fragments. You were part of the early observation team before we shut down the facility that trained him. You were embedded, placed under shielding, and reassigned. The isolation therapy erased the memory traces. It was necessary for your safety. 0471 stepped even closer. You're not just investigating this case, Elise, he said softly. You're finishing the assignment you started years ago. Something cracked inside her chest. Confusion, betrayal, disbelief all colliding. Rourke shouted, straining against his restraints. Don't listen. They used you then. They're using you now. 0471 turned, calm. He's trying to survive. Nothing more. Ramos' expression tightened. Detective, we need your authorization. The asset cannot be redeployed without the secondary officer's consent. That's why he brought you here. He pointed to Rourke. 0471 nodded. He needed you on his side. He knew your memory would return the moment you saw me in person. Elise backed away, gun trembling. Stop. All of you. I don't remember anything. That's the point, Ramos said. 0471 stepped forward, his voice steady, too steady. Elise, you need to choose. Her mind raced. Every clue she'd uncovered, every word spoken tonight, the truth twisted on itself, impossible to untangle. Rourke's desperate voice, Ramos' calm certainty, 0471's eerie logic. She couldn't decide who was lying, or if all of them were. 0471 lifted his wrist, showing the faint scar she hadn't noticed before. A surgical mark. Fresh. They activated me, he said, but only you can authorize deployment. The room vibrated. Lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the bunker, machinery roared to life. Elise, Ramos urged, give the authorization. No, Rourke shouted. Shut it down. The biometric panel beside the door lit up suddenly, displaying her name. Elise Calder, awaiting final input. 0471 stepped close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him. Elise choose. Her pulse hammered, her vision blurred, her hand lifted, not because she wanted to, but because something inside her did. Something old, buried, conditioned. Her fingertip hovered over the panel. 0471 watched her in absolute stillness. Ramos held his breath. Rourke thrashed, screaming for her to stop. The world narrowed to a needle-thin point. Elise touched the screen. It flashed approval. The bunker lights surged bright. 0471 inhaled sharply, as if a switch had been flipped inside him. Ramos whispered, It's done. Rourke shouted in horror, Elise, what have you? But before he could finish, Elise turned slowly toward him. Her eyes were distant, hollow, activated. Something inside her had awakened too. 0471 stepped to her side. Two assets, reactivated together. Rourke went silent, realization breaking across his face. God help us, he whispered. The chamber door slid shut. A security lock engaged. A soft final click. And in the reflection, On the steel surface, Elise caught a glimpse of herself, not as a detective, not as a rescuer, but as something she didn't recognize, something she didn't remember becoming, a trained part of the same program she thought she was investigating, a piece that had been asleep until now, a shadow built for a purpose she no longer understood. Her voice emerged, quiet and unfamiliar, echoing through the steel room. It was never about the escape. It was about the awakening. 0471 nodded beside her, and together, they stepped into the darkness beyond the bunker door, toward an operation already in motion. The world above had no idea what was coming, and neither of them had any intention of being stopped. If you thought this story was intense, you're not even close to ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.